A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to our GETI live session series as a part of hashtag Disruptive Education Movement, an initiative by Global Education and Training Institute under Dr. Sunita Gandhi with a vision to transform education by sharing ideas for change. And we are committed to teachers' training and professional development to facilitate learning, teaching, and sharing ideas with the world. Well, uh, every time I mention, we have conducted more than 1100 sessions on this platform under the hashtag Disruptive Education Movement, wherein we bring education leaders from around the globe. And so here I am back with another amazing speaker with us, our guest speaker for this evening, Miss Amrit Nagpal, who is an early years professional with a degree in Masters in Education, and she holds 15 years of experience in foundational years, content designing, training pre-service and in-service teachers. Well, currently she is the head of Department of Preschool and ECCED at Birla Open Minds, and of course, a passionate storyteller here with us. And I'm really looking forward for today's session. A very warm welcome to you, ma'am, on this platform once again. And without much ado, since our viewers are waiting, I would request you to please take over the session.
Thank you so much, Getty. It's an honor to be here, and thank you so much, Preena, for the wonderful introduction. So let me start. And since today we're going to be talking a lot about storytelling, so why not let's start with the story first? So here I am going to be telling you a story first, and then I'll be sharing my presentation. So are you ready? Great. Let's get started. So far, far away, long, long ago, in a village long ago, there lived two girls. These two girls were the best friends of all. Long, long ago, far, far away, in a village long ago, there lived two girls. These two girls were best friends of all. So, my dear friends, today's story is based on a village that was far, far away, and in this village there lived two girls. Now, just like most girls, these were beautiful girls. And one day, these two girls, for fun, said, I am a pretty girl. That one said, even I'm a pretty girl. And both of them wanted to know who was the prettiest of all in that particular village. So they went to meet one of their third friend. And as and when they went to meet their third friend, and they asked, you know what, could you tell me who's more pretty in the village? Am I more pretty or is she more pretty? And the third friend said, interesting. Why don't we do a thing that you both can enter the village separately? And as you come out of the village, the number of followers you get along with you, we can declare she's the most prettiest girl of the village. And that's what happened. Girl 1 went and walked and walked and walked till the time she entered the big arch gate or the entrance of the village. As she entered, she looked to her right. She saw a big banyan tree, and under the banyan tree, there were few old men, few young men. Some of them were playing with cards, some of them were sipping on tea, some of them were eating biscuits. When she looked to her left, she saw children playing in the mud, some children were cycling, and when she looked a little further away, she saw women who were doing chores of the day. Some of them were cleaning rice, some of them were prepping for lunch. And she put her first foot in, thinking that somebody will notice. But sadly, nobody noticed. Then she put her the left foot in. She thought somebody would notice now. Nobody noticed. Then she joined both her hands and clapped. Soon, an old man over there sitting under the banyan tree who was playing with his cards got a glimpse of the girl and noticed her. And as soon as he noticed her, he suddenly got up. He got up and he ran across the road. He picked up some of his children and ran towards his house. Looking at him, the other old men also ran across. Some held their wives' hands and ran towards their house. Some held their daughters' hands and ran towards the house. Some other men picked up their younger children and started running towards their house. Now, as soon as they were running, they all went into the house and started closing the doors and the windows of the house. They latched them very well. But there were a few of them who were peeping from the side of the window. The girl felt very humiliated. She kept wondering, my friends tell me I'm very pretty. Everybody tells me I'm very pretty. Why are the villagers behaving in an odd manner? She walked a little further, and as she looked towards her right, all the houses that were there on the right quickly shut off their windows. And as soon as she looked on the left, all the houses on the left side, they quickly latched up their doors again. Those who were peeping were not peeping anymore. They drew the curtains and completely shunned her. She felt very humiliated. She didn't know what to do. She had never experienced this thing. She walked and walked ahead, and through her eyes, there were tears rolling down. And she began to cry. Her throat began to get drier and drier. And she went to her friend's house, where she started crying. I felt so humiliated. The villagers think I'm no longer pretty. Why did they do such a thing? Her second friend told her, my dear darling, calm down, calm down. Yeah, there's a glass of water. Why don't you drink this water? She said, no, I don't want water. I have felt so humiliated. They don't think I'm pretty anymore. Her friend calmed her down and said, don't you worry. Don't you worry. Relax. Take a deep breath. But this girl was so agitated and humiliated that she told her friend, now you get into the village and I want to see who is more prettier, you or me. The friend knew that if I don't listen to my friend, she's going to get more and more angry. So she listened to her at once and she stepped out of her house, went outside the village, and as she approached the village arched entrance, she put in her right foot inside, and there came the sound, chun, chun. The men started looking at her. Then she got an idea. She started seeing, oh, there are men on my right side, there were children on my left side, and there were few ladies far away. She smiled and then she gave them a nice, smiley look. She put in her left foot inside. Chun, chun, chun. The bangles in her hand all went chun, chun, chun. Her smile was mesmerizing. And as she kept walking past by the banyan tree, the folks, old folks, young folks, started following her. The children looked at her smiling face and started following her. Soon the women joined in also. And as she passed by the entire village, lane by lane. All the folks of the village started joining her, and as she walked, everybody followed her and flocked her to look at her mesmerizing beauty, her smiling face, and she walked to her friend's house. Now, as they were walking, it's a village, right? So all the mud was flying and flying away. And as and when she started walking close to the house, the friend who was in the house thought she's already won the competition. Everybody is following her. She is more beautiful than me. Did everybody lie to me that I'm not beautiful? As her friend walked inside the house, she asked her friend, are you that beautiful than me? Why am I not beautiful? Why everybody does not like me? The friend said, my dear friend, do you know you're the truth? Nobody likes the truth. You are the bare, ugly truth. Everybody fears truth because of their own fears. But you know what, my dear friend? I am a story. And wherever I go, everybody keeps flocking around me. It does not matter whether you're old, young, you're a man or a woman. It really doesn't matter. What really matters is that people flock around to listen to stories. So she held her friend's hand, that was the truth, and she told her, come on, let's walk into the village together. Truth was very scared knowing that. She said, no, 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 no. I don't want to walk with you. What if everybody again starts humiliating me? She began to fear everybody. But that's when the story said, my dear truth, I will dress you up like a beautiful truth. So she gave her good bangles, she dressed her up with beautiful feathers and beautiful accessories around her neck, made her wear beautiful jhumkas, and they both walked in together in the village across the entrance, the arched entrance together, walking hand in hand. And that, my dear friends, signifies that most stories are not made of myth. They're definitely made of facts and truths that we usually forget. And as educators, what we do not realize is that stories are so powerful as a tool, as a pedagogy to explain to our children. So, my dear friends, remember the story of interweaving the truth into a story. So, far, far away, long, long ago, far, far away, long, long ago, there lived two girls, one named Truth and the other Story. And wherever the story goes, the truth definitely follows. So, my dear friends, now I'm going to take a pause, and in my pause, I'm going to share one of my PPTs that I am going to be sharing with you. Just give me 1 second. Just give me 1 second, please. Prina, are you able to see my screen?
Yes, ma'am, it's visible.
Okay, let's begin about diving deep into storytelling. Now that I have told you a story, I would like you all to remember, where did story actually begin from? Is it a relatively a new concept? Or did this concept really exist long, long ago and we never knew about it? So, the story first started with the discovery of fire. Because as and when fire was discovered, men and women, along with their families, started flocking around the fire and they started narrating stories about their day to day life. So, stories is not something new, stories always existed right from the time of the early man. Early man, when they would go out hunting, they would come back and narrate stories about how they did hunting. Women of the family started narrating stories about what they did at home in terms of farming or how did they take care of their children. And that's how the concept of story actually began. It's not relatively new, it's always existed for billions of years. And the first evidences of stories come when early man started doing a lot of cave paintings, and through the paintings also revealed the kinds of animals that the early man had around him, what they would do during hunting, how would they do hunting. So stories have always existed around us, and storytelling has progressed through ages. One of the first evidences of storytelling came in visual and oral storytelling that actually happened while the early man was existing. So they would tell stories about hunting, about farming, about their families. And while visual storytelling happened, it happened in the caves where early man would start painting about the different animals that he saw and the animals that he hunted. Slowly, slowly, as and when industrial revolution came in and printing started happening, mass production of newspapers and magazines started coming, and that's where written form of storytelling started existing. Our magazine articles are nothing but short stories. And today we live in the most technologically advanced world. And in the last few decades, technology has advanced to a great extent, and digital storytelling has come into being. But what we've truly forgotten is the art and the science behind storytelling, and why visual and oral storytelling is so important for us as a human civilization. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today. So, when I talk about digital storytelling, our movies are nothing but digital storytelling. So, when we see a movie in 3D, that's a movie like The Lion King or The Jungle Book, when we see it in 3D or 4D, that's the actual experience that we go through, right? When we can actually hear the swaying of the leaves, we can hear the roar of the lion and the tigers, and our chairs keep moving according to the dimensions. And that's where we talk about digital storytelling. And that's how storytelling has definitely progressed through ages. Now, what I'm going to also be talking about today is the neuroscience of storytelling. Now, there's a lot of research that's happened in the last few decades that definitely talks a lot about the neuroscientific findings and how storytelling has affected our brains and how storytelling changes our brain, and why educators must use storytelling a lot into the classrooms. Now, storytelling over here is not just for the early years or the foundational years. Storytelling as a concept, or you can deliver a lot of your concepts through storytelling, because storytelling is one of the most powerful tools. And that's what we're going to be unraveling today. So, while you're narrating about stories, it's important for you to understand that the first thing that happens while narrating storytelling is neural coupling. Now, neural coupling that happens is between the storyteller, that is the speaker, and the listener. Those mostly are your children. Now, if you see, I started the session with a short storytelling. The reason I wanted to start with a short session of storytelling is just to make you understand that why stories are so important to one's culture. So, as and when neural coupling is happening in our brains, most psychologists refer as a flight of imagination or a narrative transport that takes you through a different world. The moment I said the words, far, far away, long, long ago, in a village there lived two girls. So I'm sure your brain definitely took you, transported you from a city life to a rural life. And that is what is important that's happening during storytelling. That's neural coupling. Now, neural coupling is one of the most important things that you can immerse the, the listeners to. And while neural coupling is happening, it's also said that by the time the child is about 4 or 5 years of age, the child understands the theory of mind. Now, the theory of mind is that I have the ability to put myself into somebody else's shoes and start feeling and empathizing the same thing that the main character of the story is going through. So while neurocoupling is happening into our brain and while we're being transported into a different world, the more the empathy the speaker or the storyteller shows, the more immersed the listener is going to come into the story. And this is nothing but ensuring that our listeners are truly engaged in storytelling. And that is where all the neurons in the brain start firing. And then comes mirroring. So, as and when the story goes along, and the storyteller starts talking a lot about the story and the main character of the story, what the character is feeling. Is the character happy, sad? What are the emotions that the character is going through? The same emotions are mirrored in the listener's brain. And this is very important for us to realize and understand that for every listener, whether you're an adult or a child, there is something that we keep identifying ourselves with the main characters of the story or the sub characters of the story. And that is why we're completely immersed into the storytelling and its experiences. And as soon as these two activities happen, what's actually happening in the brain is that our auditory cortex, that if you can see is very close to the temporal lobe, that completely gets activated and fired up. And as the auditory cortex is completely activated, the left temporal lobe also starts firing up. Now, the left temporal lobe is primarily responsible for reception of language. So, the more and more words the storyteller uses in the story, the children or the listener will pick it up. So, with younger children, you do a lot of repetition of words. And with the older children, you start introducing different vocabularies so that children get a hang of these new words and they completely are receptive to the new vocabulary. And that's what we want, right? As educators and parents, we want our children to pick up new vocabulary words. And for that, one of the good things that we could do is narrate a lot of stories into our classrooms. So while our temporal lobe is completely active and fired up and responsible for language, so what happens next is that over here, the next adjoining cortexes get completely fired up and engaged. So the moment we talk about physical activity in the story, that could be running, that could be sleeping, that could be walking, it activates the motor cortex of the brain. and simultaneously it fires up the sensory cortex also of the brain. The sensory cortex of the brain starts getting fired up when we start talking about emotions, when we start talking about food, when we start giving powerful descriptions about food. My mouth is watering, my mouth was drooling. So when we give such responses, our brain gets activated, and all the activities that our brain is undergoing are just extremely powerful at this point of time, because each of the cortexes or the areas are responsible for one or the other activity. And research also tells us the moment we pause in the story, a very powerful hormone releases out of our brain, and this powerful hormone is called as dopamine. Now dopamine is a hormone that completely helps us to understand that, oh my god, what is the main character of the story going to do right now? We do that with most of our TV serials, right? If you're a parent watching, most of your television shows will have the main character going through something very sad or unhappy or unfortunate, and the brain completely goes like, what's going to happen next? Now, this a very powerful dopamine was definitely released when the movie Bahubali was released. When Bahubali Part 1 ended with saying that Kattapane Bahubali ko kyun mara, and that left the entire country on a cliffhanger because everybody wanted to know why did he kill the main character of the story. And the 4 years long that the movie was made, everybody, every news channel, uh, every comedy show just had one question asking people what could be the reason that that Kattapa killed Bahubali. So, lot of script writers and storytellers use dopamine very powerfully as a hormone because they want dopamine to be released into your brains. They want your brains to feel something sad. They want your brains to feel like, oh my God, what could happen next into the story? It is so difficult for the main character to deal with. And believe me, when all stories end with a happy ending, another hormone in our body is released through the brain, and that is the oxytocin. The oxytocin is the happy, happy, happy hormone. That is why most stories that you do with the younger kids or in the foundational years up till grade 2, 3, are most of these stories do have a happy ending because as humans, we all want a happily ever after. These stories give us hope that everything in the end is going to be fine. It gives us hope that evil cannot prevail forever. One day, goodness will triumph. And that is where oxytocin is released, and it is important for our existence. So, my dear friends, let me just sum uh, this up for you. Now, what exactly happens into your brain while someone is narrating a story? The first thing that the brain goes through is neural coupling. It activates the parts of your brain and allows you to get completely submerged and immersed into the storyteller's experience. The mirroring happens because the brain activity that the speaker goes through, the listener also goes through. There are powerful hormones that are released in the brain while we are narrating stories. We are so emotionally charged up, whether it is the dopamine or the cortisol or the happy hormone that is oxytocin. And believe me, the entire brain or the different cortices of the brain are also engaged and fired up at the same time. And a well told or a well narrated story, according to research, lasts far more longer. So I'll just give you an example over here. Now, uh, if you ever ask somebody who is an adult, which story did they remember better, the Archimedes principle story or the thirsty crow or the greedy dog? I'm sure most of them will say that definitely we remember the thirsty crow story better than the story of the Archimedes. And that's why storytelling is a very powerful tool, that you could either talk on emotional concepts, or concepts related to physics or any other concepts. Now, what is also important for most storytellers to remember is the art of storytelling. I'm just going to give you a short glimpse or tips on what you should do while narrating stories. These are the four key elements of a story. It's important that you well define where is your story taking place. So well define the setting of the story. Is it in an urban area? Is it in which country? Is it in India? Is it in Australia? Is it in a rural setting, or is it in an urban setting? Did the story happen a few years ago, or did the story happen long long ago, or it was in a village that was far far away? Was the story even before you, me, or all of us, even our grandparents were born? How long was the story is something that we need to define very clearly into our settings. Then comes the characters of the story. Is it a multi-star cast? So are there multiple characters of the story? Are there two characters in the story, or it's a solo character story? Then you come to the problem of the story. What problem does the main character of the story encounter, and slowly slip into the solution? How did the main character of the story solve the problem? So these are the main key elements of a story that every good storyteller should remember while creating a story. And there's something else that Gestalt talks about a story arc. Now, Gestalt talks about a powerful story arc that most storytellers should use while creating their own stories. So, first is exposition. So, I'm going to take up a simple story like The Three Little Pigs. Now, Three Little Pigs is one of my favorite stories, and I'm going to relate the Three Little Pigs to the story arc for you so that you get a more clearer understanding. So, in the story of the three little pigs, the pigs are living with the mama pig, and they live in a farm. And the mama pig says that, y'all have all grown up now, but y'all are very naughty pigs. So now it's time for you to move out of the house. But there's a nice piece of land that you can find outside the farm, and you can make your own houses over there. But you have to remember the farm is adjoining a jungle, and in the jungle there lives a big bad wolf. So the mother warns them, and these three little pigs set out of their farm, taking their bags on their back and singing this song. We are the three little pigs, the three little pigs, the three little pigs. And that's how the story begins. So exposition, we know it happens on a farm. We know the enticing incident has happens when the mother warns what could happen to the piglets. And then the rising action happens where they find a piece of land, and they all start building their houses. And the first pig builds a house out of straw, the second pig builds a house out of sticks, and the third pig starts building a house out of bricks. And now they already know that the mother has warned them about the big bad wolf. The crisis of the story happens when the big bad wolf comes in, and the big bad wolf comes and says, he goes huff and puff, and he blows the house of the first pig down. And the first pig is very scared, and he quickly runs to the second pig's house, the house with the stick house. The wolf goes to the stick house and says, if you don't come out, I'm going to huff and puff, and I'm going to blow your house down. And he goes huff and puff, and he blows the house down. And that's where there is ultimate crisis in the story, because the two pigs have already lost their houses, and everyone is on the cliffhanger over here because they don't know what's going to happen next. That's when the two pigs run to the third pig's house, and the third pig's house is made out of bricks. And the wolf goes, he does huff and puff, and he blows the house down. It does not get blown away. He tries again. He goes huff and puff, and he blows the house down. That doesn't happen. That's when the wolf gets an idea and he climbs up the chimney of the house. And the third pig was a really smart pig. He keeps some boiling water in a pot underneath it. And as the wolf is coming down the chimney, the wolf's tail gets burnt by the boiling water. And the wolf goes, woof, 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 and he runs away. And all the three little pigs start dancing in the end, saying, we are not scared of the big bad wolf, the big bad wolf, the big bad wolf. And that is the ending of the story. So, my dear friends, you've understood how the climax happens, because when uh, the wolf is already at the chimney, that is the climax point of the story, is that they don't know what's going to happen next. Is the wolf going to come down the chimney and eat all the three pigs, or is there going to be a different end to the story? But what denouement is over here is that denouement means that all the multi characters that you have in the story, everybody gets a happy ending. And you get to know as a listener that every story has an ending. But in the Three Little Pigs story, nobody talks about what happens to the mama pig. So the denouement over here is not closed. Denouement over here means that all the characters of the story need to have a happy ending, or the loop needs to be closed in the story arc. So this is the story arc for you, my dear friends. And let me just summarize the power of storytelling for you again. Is again, what happens while you're narrating a story is, the first thing that happens is the auditory cortex, through the sounds of the story, starts becoming active. So it's a good way to start a story with, once upon a time, long, long ago, or longer, long ago, longer, long ago, there lived on a farm three little pigs. So something like that is how you could start a story. Most stories get started by once upon a time, or one sunny Sunday morning, or far, far away in the land of flowers, there lives somebody. So that's how auditory cortex starts getting fired up. And the moment you talk about different words in the story, you start activating the temporal lobe and the other areas that are responsible for language. One is the Broca's area that is responsible for language processing, and the Wernicke's area that is responsible for language comprehension. As and when the story progresses, whenever you talk about something related to actions, physical actions, the motor cortex starts getting activated. So when we have actions like running, walking, swimming, definitely the motor cortex is more fired up. And as and when you talk about different food items, you talk about, oh, my mouth is watering. Oh, I'm smelling the wonderful and the sweet smell of pudding. That's when the the sensory cortex related to food gets activated. Also, most stories are visual, so the visual cortex gets activated. And a very important part of our brain is a very, very, very small organ that is responsible for most of our emotional reaction, and that is called the amygdala. Now, the amygdala is an almond shaped thing that's there in our brain, and the amygdala is completely responsible for our emotional reaction. So, whenever we want to get frightened into a story, or we want to freeze into a story, or whenever we are sad while looking at a story, the amygdala gets hijacked, and that's important in a story, right? And then you unhijack the amygdala by giving the story a happy ending. So it's important that the listener or the children go through the amygdala hijack, so that they can have the emotional reaction and they can sympathize themselves and empathize themselves with the main character of the story. So when we're working with younger children, it's mostly that we narrate a lot of stories. We start with the Peppa Pigs. You've got the Pepper, Bruno. Most of these story characters are talking about issues and problems that younger children usually face, and so their parents also keep facing problems like, my child scribbles on the wall, or my child eats too much cake, and so things like that. So the children tend to identify with the main characters of the story. And that's how, without pointing out that, I'm talking about you, the storytelling is so powerful that it helps children to empathize themselves with the character. So you don't have to tell children that, you have to be disciplined into your classroom. You could just pick up a story that focuses on disciplining, and you could weave it like that into your classroom. Also, storytelling as a pedagogy is of utmost importance, and it's not just the NEP talks about the storytelling as a pedagogy for the foundational years, but also for the higher grades also. So while we are narrating stories, we need to keep in mind that yes, this is what is happening in our brain, and as and when it's happening into our brain, it's also shaping our brain. Storytelling holds a lot of power over our brain, and a well told story will be remembered for a long time rather than just stating facts. And that's the reason why I wanted to narrate the story in the beginning. That everybody who talks about history as a subject, we have a lot of these sciences, a lot of discoveries that have stories behind us. And if rather than just telling children about facts, we narrate it through the story, what happened to what happened to Thomas Edison? What was the story behind inventing the light bulb? If we actually tell them the story, they will remember the facts better rather than just stating the facts. If we talk about what happened to Rani Ki Jhansi in history, in terms of a story, they will remember it far better than just stating facts about history. So, storytelling is extremely powerful, and we all need to ensure that yes, a lot of hormones are released, dopamine, cortisol, and oxytocin in the end. So, you have to ensure that each of your story has an happy ending, and also close all the denouement loops that you have in the story. Now, lastly, I would like to tell you is that as teachers, as educators, as edu leaders, as parents, now that we know about the great power that comes with storytelling, please use it very responsibly and efficiently into your classrooms, because that is very important. And that, my dear friends, I'm going to end my presentation right here.
Well, that was a lovely session. I thoroughly enjoyed all your stories, the way you narrated. I think indeed it's an art. That was, I can sum up the entire session in wow, and I'm sure the viewers equally enjoyed out there. So yes, storytelling. I mean, talking about history, you discussed about the history, and then progression from visual to written, and then coming to the digital storytelling. I think it is one of the most powerful means that people can have to influence and teach and inspire people around. I think beautifully explained. And
It's not only powerful, Prina, but it's a long lost tool that we forgot in our art. and
right.
and through this presentation, I want to tell all the educators out there is that don't do storytelling because you have to do it, because NEP talks about it. Do it
Right.
because you have the passion for it. Do it because you want to do it, and definitely remember the brain science behind it.
I think you inspire us. I think you're the right person where you just don't do it for the heck of doing it, but do it with all zeal and enthusiasm that you are doing the
Absolutely.
storytelling session. I think, yes, it connects people, and you can share ideas. You can, the stories, how they convey the culture, history, values that unite people. I think you have covered all the beautiful points, and how you actually explained how our human brain actually works, how it is affected with stories, and all the steps that you explained in detail, what all functions in our brain work, about the dopamine release, about the oxytocin part, about I mean, and that story arc as well that was shown in one of your slides. I think a proper way to narrate a story, just to have an effective one. I think you have covered everything, talking about neural coupling, how the listener and the narrator, they connect, and they are all together in a different world while narrating the stories. and so many more points. I think I'm missing few because there was so much to listen. I think, and connecting with the teaching part, I think storytelling is the oldest form of teaching. Uh, if we talk about it, is bonded with early human communities, giving children the answer to the biggest questions of life, about creation, about afterlife. And yes, you said how we can actually make our subjects more interesting by changing it into the storytelling, like history and geography. I think most of the time, students are not really, they don't enjoy the sessions, and it's not only for the little ones, but definitely for the senior classes also. So I think teachers are storytellers. I think somehow they are already the storytellers, the way they are teaching in the classroom, and they don't see themselves as one, as a storyteller, but they think that you need to have something special to be one. But I think they're already doing it. What do you have to say on this?
I think most teachers do it because the time for the younger ones, the timetable suggests you have to do storytelling, so they do it. But
Yeah.
but what I want them to do is do it with the passion and the zeal. So I started with a story saying that when you put a fact and a story together, it's more receptive to the audience rather
Right.
than just showing them the fact. That story was more for all the teachers who are teaching in the higher grades, and
Mhm.
helping them understand that it's not just your history. You could do your physics. A lot of the concepts, scientific concepts, have backed up with stories. A lot
Right.
of our problems have been backed up with stories, and there is so much that you could do. So when we talk about the green revolution, we talk about the white revolutions. These are things that started in our country because of a problem, and from the problem arises a beautiful story. And that's what we all need to find out, is the story behind it, and
Right.
use that story to explain our children facts.
Absolutely right. And I can see a question. Uh, the story and factual description more alike, and what are the main features of storytelling? I can see this question by Mr. K. Banerjee.
Okay. So when we talk about a story and factual description, so what we do in history, we're only stating facts and we're describing the facts. Okay. Now, if you see that Archimedes has a wonderful story behind it on how did he understand what was the weight of the gold in the king's crown. Nobody tells the story, or people just say the story for the sake of it. But if an educator of physics is actually sinking in that once upon a time in Greece there was a king. The king had a problem, and the problem was, how do I find how much gold is there in my crown, or is my crown having other metal elements also? How do I find out? And he went to his main minister in the court, and he said that, I'm going to give you 1 day or x number of days to find this out. How would you do that? And the minister, 1 day passed, he didn't know what to do. The second day passed, he didn't know what to do. If you create that kind of drama, I think people will remember physics far better.
Right, right. We do
And
remember things. Yes,
we do remember things when they're told in the form of a story. So it's not
absolutely.
just about facts, but how you very smartly you weave a story around these facts is the talent of a teacher. And that's what this presentation today talks about. That, listen, this is what happens in your brain, this is what you could do, and now at the end you've got the power to ensure that all the facts that you have presented, you can present them through a story. And how you do it is up to you. The right number of pauses in the story helps the brain remember the story far better. That's the secret. You need to know in the story, when do you want to pause, where do you want to push the story at a faster pace. And that is the true secret of storytelling. that most script writers use, most actors use it. So movie is nothing but a form of storytelling, right?
Right,
And
right.
we when we go to a movie theater now, obviously none of us have gone to a movie theater since last God knows how many months now. But when we go
Yeah,
to a theater, what comes to our mind, right? We are judging it, right? Was that a good movie? Not a good movie. Oh my God, the movie is so good. The movie is probably good because the story was good. The movie was good because the storyteller was good. The movie is always good because the story is narrated in a specific way.
definitely.
The
Right.
story has the number of pauses. In a movie, the movie knows the right time to break for an interval, right, to create that dopamine in our heads, to release the hormones. And throughout, we either thinking of what we're going to eat during the interval, or if the movie is really good, we want to know what is going to happen next to the main character of the story. So there are movies that have captivated us for a very long time.
Yes,
And
true, true.
these are the elements that script writers, storytellers, directors use. Why not educators using these same elements? Now I've given you the very short and crisp these four elements. So use it powerfully.
Well, that was a lot of information on storytelling. I think everybody, I mean, there's so much to take away from your session today. Storytelling is a unique way for anybody, not only for students, but anyone to develop an understanding and respect and appreciation for, other people, other cultures, and you are somewhere, promoting a positive attitude to people. And
True.
I think there are so many other benefits.
Everybody has his or her own style of storytelling. So you'll definitely see storytellers who are over dramatic. That's their way of doing stories. So most,
Right.
early childhood educators, I'll say, please be over dramatic, because when your children are immersed in a good story, they're always like, this is the expression that you see on faces of most children. And when you're with older children, you may not want to be very dramatic, but you may want to be very subtle and calm, because you want them to get the
Hmm.
concept very well. So you may want to pause a lot more.
It's That's your own style, the way you are narrating. I think your own
Absolutely. You
style.
have to find your own style. And everybody has their own unique style of storytelling. I've seen some storytellers who incorporate music very well into storytelling because they are musical, because they're good singers.
True, true. I think yes, becoming a storyteller takes effort and inclination on your behalf, but with so many benefits, I think, isn't it worth trying? To all the educators out there, you
Absolutely.
might surprise people, maybe yourself first and then your students as well. And yes, I
And
can
yes,
see.
to Mr. Banerjee's question, yes, it can be fabricated very well.
Thank you, Mr. Banerjee. As you can see, nicely demonstrated. Thank you so much. And yes, I think with this, we come to an end of this wonderful session. I think storytelling is more than a way of exchanging information and extending ideas. It is, their means of reaching out and connecting with other people. And it can not only link between the world of classroom, as we're talking about the educators and students, but I think beyond your classrooms as well. So thank you so much, ma'am. It was a wonderful session. Thanks a
Thank you.
lot.
Thank you to Getty, and thank you, Prina.
The pleasure is all ours, ma'am. We'll definitely connect soon with something more exciting to talk on. And dear viewers, in case you have any questions, you can definitely post it in the comment section. Ma'am will definitely try to answer them as and when possible. So, with this, a very big thanks to ma'am once again on behalf of our team. Thank you everyone for joining in. Thank you, ma'am. We'll connect soon. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks a lot. Thank you, everyone.